we're all here to be talking about the AUA News Diversity Focus issue. The focus issue for 2024 is going to be coming out very soon. I'm Stacy Tanaka, Professor of Urology at University of Alabama, Birmingham, and editor of the AUA News. And I'm honored to be here with Dr. John Denstedt, Professor of Urology at University of Western Ontario, and Dr. Tracy Downs, Professor of Urology and Chief Diversity and Community Engagement Officer at the University of Virginia, to discuss the history of the diversity focus issue. And so to set the stage, the first issue was released in 2021, and 2020 was obviously a challenging year for many reasons. Dr. Denstedt, at that time, you were secretary of the AUA, and Dr. Downs, you were at that time named as the inaugural chair of the AUA's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, and you both partnered to create the diversity focus issue. Can you talk about what led to the creation of the issue?
Sure, I can jump in there first. And thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to participate here. It's great to have this opportunity to look back at a little bit of history, Stacy, and I appreciate the invitation. And obviously, Tracy Downs can jump in here as well. You are correct. It was a time back 2020, 2021, when there was a lot going on in the world, the pandemic, of course, but a lot of interest as well in diversity and inclusion, just generally, certainly in the US, but indeed on a global basis. And it was at that time that the board of the AUA established a task force to consider the topic of diversity and inclusion, and Tracy Downs was appointed, and a great appointment, by the way, to chair the task force, which ultimately evolved into a full committee of the AUA. But we thought it was timely to have a series of articles in AUANews, which is a great platform for it, with a very widespread distribution, indeed on a global basis, and translation of multiple languages and so forth. So we thought the timing was right at that point to undertake to do a diversity and inclusion issue of AUANews. So I'm sure Tracy can speak a little bit about the task force and the timing of all of this as well. Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, John, so much, and Dr. Tanaka, thanks for having us, and for you and others carrying the torch. And when you think about periodicals and readership, we clearly value peer-reviewed journals and all of those things, but the periodical that most urologists pick up and look at every month is AUANews, and so having an opportunity to be in that was, fortuitous. It wasn't something that I think we thought about when we were asked to be a part of the task force. And, a lot of kudos to the AUA board, especially Dr. Scott Swanson, who was the AUA president at that point. And I liken it in a lot of ways to kind of the Jackie Robinson, Branch Rickey kind of story, which is when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, and it was just that team approach, right? You needed to have people who valued diversity and inclusion from multiple backgrounds, multiple experiences, multiple continents, not incontinents, I said continents, and that was kind of the nexus for the beginning of the task force. And then it was just reaching out to people who you knew were passionate but also effective in that work. And Simone Thavasilan could not have been a better vice chair to have on that task force. And then the relationships that were built through that, and the AUA secretary is an incredibly pivotal role. I know the president gets a lot of shine and spotlight, but boy, is the secretary the glue. And John was just that person, and getting to know him personally, is something that doesn't happen often with just all of our busy schedules. And those are the things that I'll remember the most, is just the connection, and then going forward on this issue. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one where I think we sent out requests for articles, and we actually had 100% commitment to the articles, and actually got extra. We got too many, I think, but to the credit of AUANews, I think we published every single one.
How
And
did you feel? Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Insett.
I was just going to respond there to Tracy that you're absolutely right, Tracy. I mean, the entire thing actually came together very quickly. I wouldn't say we were hasty at all about doing it, but we were on very, very tight timelines. And it was early in 2021. We wanted to get the issue before the annual meeting. So as I recall, we gave the people who we invited, it was about 3 or 4 weeks notice really to produce the articles, get them in. And you're absolutely correct. It was inspiring. The response rate was 100%, and 100% of the people delivered their articles on time, if not early. So it was, as I say, very inspiring.
Now, I would agree. I mean, looking back at those articles now, you don't see any sort of haste to it at all. It's so well put together, and it's such just a wide range of voices that it does. I mean, it's amazing that you were able to reach out to so many people and to get that quick turnaround to get all those contributions. How did you both feel about the result when it came out?
Well, I have to say I was very pleased. I mean, over the top pleased, actually. So the response from the authors was tremendous, just the demonstrated commitment that they had to deliver these articles, which one and all were just fantastic articles all around. And the response from the urologic community, I mean, it was universally positive. Everything I heard back from people, either by text, phone, or emails, was very positive. Not just about the articles, but about the concept that we would do it. We were one of the first, if not the first, surgical group to undertake to do something like this, and it was very well received. Tracy?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it just, I mean, it was the timing that was right. It was almost trying to catch the top of a wave, right? We had incredible turmoil, right? Some of it we're seeing replay itself in globally around inclusion and diversity, and the ability for the task force, followed by the AUANews, followed by the annual meeting, was perfect. What I remember is, I know how, I mean, and academics were busy too, but sometimes it's a different type of busy than, say, a private practice urologist or someone who's in a large urology group practice. And I just remember someone from that, I don't know, they kind of pulled me aside or said something, and it shocked me because they said, "Hey, I read that, kind of cover to cover, and I really enjoyed it." And I don't know, I guess I wasn't expecting someone who was, head down, nose to the grindstone, just chugging through, busy practice, to actually maybe find that issue interesting. You know, and so when they said that to me, I really resonated, and I was like, that says a lot. And also credit to the people who go into urology, that they are invested in people, not just their patients. So that was something I remembered.
And I think
I showed you this the other day, Stacy. I was so excited about it that I actually keep a copy of this on my desk at work. It's the first issue of Diversity and Inclusion in AUANews. I keep a copy of it.
I think it's such a credit to the authors too, because I think there are so many things that you intellectually know, but you just don't feel. And I think reading some of those articles, those first articles, really that you grasp it more. And I think that there's been an evolution over time. If you look at the different focus issues over the years, and as I was just looking over them just recently, that I think in that first issue, there were a lot of like, hey, this is a problem. But as we've progressed over the years, there's a lot more, hey, this is what our subspecialty is trying to do about this, or this is what our geographic section is trying to do, or this is what me as an individual is trying to do. So I think that there's an evolution more towards solutions, which I think is great. Is that something that you had in mind as you were planning the issue, or just something that just kind of happened?
I'm not sure it was in a planned way, Stacey. I think it just unfolded. I mean, when we sent out the initial invitations for the first issue, there were some obvious groups, to reach out to: Society of Women in Urology, R. Frank Jones, Hispanic group, and so forth. So we knew there were some organized entities that we could reach out to, who of course immediately responded. But beyond that, it was just between Tracy and I would say knowledge of who had an interest in the topic, who had talked to us about it, over the course of the previous year or even prior to that. And we reached out to those people to contribute. And then as time went on, we were able to expand on that concept and then reach out to other groups, including organized groups like the SUO, Pediatric, SPU, Endourology Society, et cetera, the AUA sections, all of whom immediately stepped up as well and contributed.
Dr. Downs, has there been anything that sort of stood out to you over the years as this has turned into that first issue to an annual issue?
It has, Dr. Tanaka. I think the the longevity of it, that it's continuing to be now kind of expected. That is really neat. So it's starting to be a part of the fabric of who we are. So, I can't wait to read this coming edition. And there's a lot of talent, right? So we were just the initial kind of group who got things started, and to see those people who are coming forward. And I think on any right group of people or organization, it's hard to be relevant to everyone, and even more so in terms of different generations. And in many ways, we were ahead of the game in terms of connecting cross generations, right? So now when you see one of the AUA members talk about what's the impact of Roe versus Wade, or how is affirmative action going to affect our recruitment at the resident level, in many ways, we started the basics of this conversation around the value of diversity. And I think the people who, before the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action came out, they said, we need to affirm the value of diversity instead of trying to defend it or carve a little bit of the piece of the pie. And I think in many ways that first issue, along with the task force and the diligent hours of the board, was to really say this is important. And therefore now when those things pop up, right, Roe versus Wade and the other things around DEI challenges, well, we have an anchor to go back to. And then this is the fabric of life, right? Is you write a mission vision statement all the time, but do you live up to it? And so it's a constant kind of compass, true north, if it is our true north, to kind of go back to that first edition that John showed and say, okay, hey, is this still who we are as urologists, as the AUA, and to ask those hard questions of ourselves. But the multi-generational aspect, I think we were ahead of that, because those young folks are asking things a lot quicker, wanting quicker answers and responses. And the international aspect in the second edition that John brought about many of the endourologists he trained. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've trained almost every female endourologist in the Middle East, and I don't know if that was Abu Dhabi, but and then to hear their stories, right? So now, as a Black African American male in the U.S., right, I've got my own journey, but then to see the common threads of I'm the only female in a male-dominated area, we're in the Middle East, and then you're like, wow, and it's that common thread of I'm included, I fit, I don't fit, I belong, I don't belong, that ties us together. And so that second edition, I think, really took us to a different place inside and outside of the US and Canada.
And I have to second that because, you know, that global, we've got several global contributions in this issue that's coming out. But in one of the previous issues, there, Maria Claudia Bacudo, who's a Brazilian woman neurologist, contributed an article. And I had the pleasure to meet her recently. And it's so interesting because even though you're in a different country, you're in a different practice, we're in different subspecialties, some of the issues are exactly the same, right? So I think that thread that runs through that commonality, I think is more than our differences, right? So.
Yeah, I think you've both hit on a very important point here in terms of the transition of this over the last few years. The first issue of it really almost entirely had a domestic, I'd say North American focus to it. The authors and the types of issues and so forth that were being addressed. But I had thought for the second iteration that really this is a global issue. It's not just a domestic item, and we really needed to expand, and that there would be great stories out there from internationally. So, I mean, some of the articles we received from China, from the Middle East, from Africa, young women and practicing urologists in Africa were just so moving articles that, and many people had talked to me afterwards about those articles, how important they were to hear those voices and hear their stories. So taking it global was a very important transition for this item in AUA News.
I think the generational component that you mentioned, Dr. Downs, is also very important because I think initially it was very much sort of small organization focused, like on Society of Women in Urology, R. Frank Jones. But I think now, because this has just become an annual thing, there are so many younger urologists now who are just so engaged, so committed to this. So for the issue that's coming out, like along with Dr. Larissa Bressler, Dr. Nathan Grunwald, Dr. Lourdes Garrios acted as our guest editors and really pulled in from all of urology just suggestions on what would be great. And so really sort of expanding the focus of what diversity is. And then still having those open submissions where if you have an idea, go ahead and submit it. And we're lucky to have Dr. Juana Andino and Dr. Shannon Cannon both, review those open submissions that came in. And there were a lot of them, which we're grateful to get.
Yeah, you've hit on another great transition point there, Stacy, and that was the first issue for sure. And I'm sure Tracy would agree here was all by invitation only, right, to the authors. So we reached out to certain groups, and it was either the second or third year we did it that we had the open call for articles and so forth that went out, and that was very, very positive. We received some great articles out of the open call, and I'm sure you're going to continue that, Stacy.
No, we definitely are. And I think the thing is, whenever you make a list of people, you're always going to exclude someone, not intentionally, but just because you forgot or you didn't think about that. And so I think the AUA has done a really good job in terms of doing like the open calls for their editorial board applications or the open call for the abstract reviewers for the annual meeting. That really, this is like the perfect scenario to do open calls, that you really want to have everyone be included. Yeah, Dr. Danstead or Dr. Downs, any closing comments at all?
Well, I'd like to pose you a question or two, Stacy. You're in
Okay.
the leadership role now at AUANews. So can you give us a little bit of a preview of this year and what types of things, without giving it all away? What will we see this year?
So, the articles were all so compelling. And I think different articles will really resonate differently with different people, but I think there's going to be something in there for really everyone. But I think what I was most taken by is people who were sharing their personal experiences, really that were difficult experiences, but in the hopes that for the next person who has to go through that experience, that it gets a little bit easier and it gets a little bit easier. And, we're a community. And I think, for science and for this, I think the shoulders of giants is true, right? You can't make progress unless other people help you. And I think that was sort of what reached me at most in this issue, those personal stories that people were willing to share in order to help others in the community.
Great. Well, let me just say in closing here, Stacy, I'm just delighted that you're keeping this up, and the great staff at AUANews who have done a tremendous job on this. Jennifer Regala, I can't let this moment go by without mentioning Jennifer, but really the entire team, Martha and so forth, have done an incredible job with it, and I'm glad it will continue. And similar to what Tracy said, I'm sure it will just expand from here. There'll be a lot of new concepts and things we'll see. So I can't wait to see what comes of this, and both this year and in future years. So thank you for all you're doing now.
All right, Dr. Downs, any comments?
I definitely want to leave the last words to Dr. Dinstead for sure. So more just echoing, thank you, Dr. Tanaga, for your legacy that you're making and for continuing to see this of value. What we started, not knowing where it would go. And thank you to Martha and of course Jennifer and many other key people across the AUA. So more thank yous for what you're doing and how you're trailblazing.
Right. I'll close with thanking you, Dr. Downs and Dr. Dinstead, for your time and for starting this, for being, the nexus of all of this. Thanking Jennifer Gala and her team, because again, you all know that without her, none of this would have happened. And then, all the authors who have contributed. And then for everyone else, please look for our articles on AUAnews.net. They'll be coming out later this month. And then please visit us if you at the publications booth at the annual meeting. And we love to hear more of your ideas.
And just before we completely sign off, Stacy, I also want to mention Patricia Banks at the AUAN Publications. Patricia was absolutely integral to the conceptualization of this years ago and pulling it off, if you like, over the subsequent years, and did an incredible job. And she was a great support.
And continues to be.
Yeah, I am sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Stacy. It's great to see you here, Tracy, again. Look forward to seeing all of you at the upcoming meeting.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you.
All right. And thank you. See you all soon.